Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm not used to doing this through a mask, but I'm gonna do it. Okay. So, welcome to Bryant Neighborhood Organization's. This is. Can you hear me? Yeah, I might have to. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Ah, okay. All right. I promise I'm safe. So anyways, okay. So, welcome to Bryant Neighborhood Organization's Community Assembly. We have really deep work to do today. I'm glad everybody's here. The fact that we are here, and I know, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, there we go. All right, thank you. So, welcome to Bryant Neighborhood Association's Community Assembly. Thank you for being here. We have a lot of work to do today, and we're looking at doing really deep racial analysis right now, as well as conversation. We've been getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of texting asking, what can I do? Well, we're about to do it right now. So, with that being said, we've got a full agenda for you. We're going to go until about 6:30. I knew George Floyd. I met him once at Conga. Amazing man. To me, the man that's going to save the world. But we're here right now due to the fact of the police assassinating George Floyd. Murdered by the police. What can we do about it, and how do we take on these oppressive systems? So, how do we take on these oppressive systems together and have conversations in groups? And how do we look at some of these strategies of dismantling the police department, personal liability insurance for the police department, alternatives to police, and what does it mean for us to take care of each other and basically to check in? This is the time now that we need each other as neighbors. And we're going to get into some small groups, and we want this to be, some of these systems have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and we can take these systems apart block by block. So this is going to be sustained efforts. So this is going to be going on for some time now, and we're glad to be here. So we're talking about analysis plus action. Anti-racist analysis plus action. So let me give you the agenda today. So we're going to do some terms in assembly. So we're going to talk about some assembly norms and terms. We're going to have some rich community history because this is Bryant Neighborhood Association or Bryant Neighborhood. And in this neighborhood has very rich black history. Very rich. So we're going to talk about that. Lastly, we're going to have the racial analysis that I was talking about. Then we're going to break up into groups. And then we're going to talk about what does that work look like going forward. So that's our agenda for today. And then we have stakes right now. So as we're breaking up into those different groups, we're going to have stakes block by block. So whatever block that you're on or identify with, we have second right here, all the way to Chicago. So we're going to have you assemble up there. And then once you've found your group, then you can go off wherever in the park, close by, of course, and shaded. And then discuss some of those deeper questions that we have, and we'll pass those questions out for you. So this really is base building work, and when it comes to base building, the more numbers we have, the more power we have. So with that, I'm going to pass this on now to Ned and Katie. Thank you for coming.
So when you said steaks, you didn't mean there's no steaks and potatoes?
No.
Oh, you meant those steaks.
The wooden stakes in the ground.
Okay.
Second, this is Chicago. All those steaks and potatoes sounds good right now. Go ahead. Oh, and then real quick, we're going to have Carmen introduce herself. She is our executive director, so.
She's the executive director of this neighborhood, too. This is one block from Cup Foods. It's a neighborhood that's adjacent to Chicago and 38th Street. There's 4 neighborhoods that meet.
I have the responsibility and the pleasure of not only representing you all, but also representing.
And this woman is amazing.
And so we are boots on the ground right now.
Woo!
Yes, indeed.
Yes! Woo!
I
vans.
Organizer is right here, Tommy McBrayer. That's Tommy. Also been helping us hold that space.
Tommy!
So we are excited for each and every last one of you that will gather in this moment. We're excited about how brave you are to be in this moment with us. But again, this thing is about strategy. This is not a sprint. This thing is a marathon.
Yes.
And so I made this quote, and I want you to think about this. Our rage has to match our strategy.
Yes.
We have to be very strategic. White supremacy is strategic. The ability to plan is strategic, and it's a privilege. So how do we own that with our creator's hand and mindset so that we can plan to demolish the system that we have witnessed that murdered George Floyd last week? I'm honored to be in your presence. Let me know how I can show up and serve, and I expect great things to happen.
Hey y'all, is it on? There you go, a little bit. My name is Caty Royce. I live over on 40th and Elliott. I've been doing community organizing work for many years and going to help talk through some norms for today's meeting. When we go on breakouts, I mean, folks have probably heard a lot of the norms that we use in meetings. Step up, step back, that means don't take up all the space, especially white folks. Let others talk. So thank God a lot of us are here are white. Let's talk to each other. Be respectful. Allow for space. Do not make others feel uncomfortable. Let me grab them from here. Listening without interrupting, so no interrupting. Cell phones off or on silent or buzz. Experience is priority, so experience takes precedence over data or academic learning.
Nice.
And like to me, like I make somebody uncomfortable when I'm speaking my truth, that's too bad. It's my truth.
That Marjaan said, speak your truth, and even if it's making someone uncomfortable, allow yourself to feel uncomfortable and allow truth to be spoken, especially if it's BIPOC folks that are speaking that truth. Be in a safe, brave zone. Safe, brave zone. So safe, but be brave. Let's talk about what we need to talk about. If you're using any kind of acronyms or like an acronym, define what that is. If we're saying MPD, we all know what that is, but explain clarify what you're saying. Recognize your privilege, be mindful of language, have courageous conversations, snap if you need to. Anyone have any others that come to mind? Anyone here have any? I'm sorry? Are you hearing her? You want to come up, hon?
I think this signals like point of information, which is just trying to give greater context to something that we want.
So she's saying point of information. So if you need to clarify a point that's being made, this is the, okay. And pronouns, I use he, she. And if people can use correct or work to understand and use correct pronouns, that's great. Terms that people wanted to kind of have a general understanding and agreement on are gentrification. So I think for us, tell me if I'm wrong, because we have not agreed on these definitions, is gentrification is the economic or cultural displacement of communities that have historically lived in a certain area by new people moving in. Usually it's white people moving in and displacing people of color and cultures. White supremacy, the system that we've been living under since white people massacred Indians and brought slavery. So it is the system with which we're living.
And on the topic of white supremacy, it's also an ideology, right? Many of us subscribe to it as an ideology. It doesn't mean we're Nazis, right? It means we've been programmed to value white lives over everybody else.
So we have been programmed to love and protect white lives over everybody else. Racism, do we need to define racism? Abolition is the destruction of a system or institution that is harmful to community.
Disenfranchisement, or maybe, or you said racism, discrimination, prejudice.
Yep. You want to define those?
Heck,
Racism.
hell no. You got this.
The terms that they're throwing. I'm sorry. What's your name?
I'm Valerie.
Valerie's throwing out are discrimination, racism, prejudice,
Disenfranchisement.
disenfranchisement. Okay. Do you want me to define those, or would you like to do that?
I would like for you.
Okay. I would define disenfranchisement very similar to gentrification as the systems that are silencing voices of dissension or voices of people of color in a society. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Racism is, and this is the definition that the People's Institute has taught me, is power plus privilege, right? Power
Plus discrimination.
No. But that, I didn't mean to say no, so. Yeah, that would be great. Come on, give it to us. Come on. All right. You guys up next. Yeah. And so those are, I guess those are some terms that we have general kind of acceptance of. If there's terms that come up in the group, and there's some disagreement about that, let's talk about it in group and figure that out. What's up next? Marjaan and Sandra?
There was another term that Carmen used yesterday, and I mean, I'm not as educated as I'd like to be. It was something like red line or blue line. When you build, okay, good.
Marjaan.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank
Can
you.
y'all hear me? Okay, all right. My name is Marjaan. It's spelled Marjaan, but it's pronounced Marjaan, like a mermaid, all right? So I live in this community for 13 years. I grew up in the suburbs in Bloomington. I experienced a lot of racism growing up, violent white supremacy. I identify as black or African American. I identify as male, he, him pronouns. I grew up poor. We lived in low-income housing in the suburbs. So I try to be a friendly neighbor, but I don't always cut my grass on time because I grew up. What's that? So if you walk by my house and my grass is long, don't judge me, right? Like, we grew up in different communities. I grew up, I didn't learn how to mow a grass till I was in my 20s, right? So as we speak our truths, these are the sort of truths we're speaking, right? So we get to know each other, break some of those barriers down, and redefine what it means to be a good neighbor, right? To me, being a good neighbor is safety, helping each other to create safety. And it means something different to me than it does to some of my neighbors. But we're going to talk about that, right? So we're going to get into the history, but I want to introduce a friend and a mentor of mine, Sandra Richardson. What's up, Brett?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Straight out, like this. Good, straight out. Yep.
Like you're gonna belt it out. You're ready to belt it.
Well, I'm pissed enough to belt it.
Belt
so, yeah,
it.
that might work out. My name is Sandra Richardson. I am from this community. I grew up on 41st in Oakland.
Yes.
My parents bought their house there in the 60s, and my mother still lives there. I lived for a time and I still own a house on 38th in Portland, and I currently live on 45th in Columbus. So I know this piece of geography better than I know any other place on earth. When I grew up here, Minnesota, Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, the bastion of liberalism and good, has always been a double-edged sword. So when my parents bought their house in the 60s, on the one hand they were welcomed, but then the Lutheran minister came because a group of people wanted to buy the house back because they didn't want black people continuing to move into this area. I've thought about how to tell the story of a community in 4 minutes, and I can't, but I'm going to do my best. This part of South Minneapolis has been home to a striving, vital black community since the 40s and 50s. There was the Tilson homes, the first homes that were built specifically that could be integrated, and 90% of those were sold to either African American or mixed race couples. There are also those highs, but there are those lows. If you look at this part of South Minneapolis, it's also a case study in how do you disempower a community as it's achieving more and more power. So one of the things that you do, and that was done here, is that all of the schools systematically were closed. So first Warrington in the 60s, and then Bryant and Central in the 70s. And people don't think that that's such a big deal. You send your kids to other schools. I went to Bryant. But you close the public places. You close the places where people can gather. And so you silence them in that way. You close the grocery store. So there, where the Jehovah Witness is over there on Nicollet, used to be a Red Owl. Where Cup Food is now, it used to be Wilhelm's Pharmacy and Drugstore. They really had, where they made the milkshakes and the, yeah. There was a Ben Franklin, there was a tailor shop. It was a whole ecosystem. It was a whole community, it was a whole neighborhood. You could walk to places, you could walk to the library, you could walk to the drugstore, you could walk to the movies. The Parkway was a functioning movie theater. On 4th Avenue, you had Dreamland in the 40s. You had the Nakarima. Dreamland was a cafe and nightclub that was owned by the Cassius family. And they had a 3-2 liquor license, and there's a whole story about how when they tried to get a liquor license and they were accused of being communists and everything else. You can look it up. Yeah, I asked my mother about it, but it was before her time. There was the Nakarima down on 4th Avenue, so it was a little club, little neighborhood bar. You had churches, you had people who had been organizers and were coming up out and in the civil rights movement, and that group of black people started organizing for political power. So you will see that the first African American Park Board Commissioner lived on your block, 40th and 5th Avenue. The first African American city council person for the South Side, Sharon Sales Belton, lived on 38th and Oakland. So you saw people organizing for political power because they thought at that time that was the way to make strides and continue to make gains. But like we all know about racism and white supremacy, it will do anything to stay in control. And so even as that community was just beginning to coalesce and build, you had things happening already. When 35W went in, originally 35W, and think about this, close your eyes and think about how 35W comes in, 94 comes into 35W, it goes straight, and then it makes these weird turns. That's because originally 35W was supposed to go in by Lyndale Avenue. But that was too close to the people at Lake Harriet and Lake Calhoun. And so the area with the least amount of political power in the city was this community that was primarily African American. And so it went in here. And so if you notice, if you drive 35W till you hit 62, if you pay attention where 35 comes and it straightens out and goes straight forever once you get to the city limits, and it's at Lyndale. And so people think, oh, Rondo, oh, 94. No. That happened, but it was a strategy, okay, that was nationwide. And so just like it happened in St. Paul, it happened here in Minneapolis. I think the other thing that's really important to understand is tell people all the time, I had a really good childhood. You know how they talk about, you know, if your mama's not home, then you go next door. If your mama wasn't home, you went to Miss Murray's house because she was like the grandma of the block. You really could, and your mother did, put you outside, and you didn't come home till the streetlights came on. Literally, you had to be home when the streetlights came home, but you didn't. And I think people talk about that like it didn't really happen here, and it did really happen here. This is a community that has never given up. And it's not giving up now. This is a black community that has and continues to strive in face of all obstacles, including the obstacles of enhanced white supremacy, accelerated gentrification, and the assumption that wherever black people are, they can just be moved someplace else. And so I know I don't do this well. I'm sorry. Is it better?
You're amazing, whatever you're doing.
But we are watching the evolution of black people being ethnically cleansed from South Minneapolis. And I don't know any other way to put it. There are a number of families who are third and fourth generation African American families in this community. Who are being pressured to leave. The cost of housing in South Minneapolis is skyrocketing. Housing discrimination and racism in housing is still viable and vital and very alive in pink-cheeked, very liberal South Minneapolis. There are a lot of people who, and this is very frustrating for me, because it seems like a lot of the time people like black culture, they like black history if it's far back, but they don't like black people. They don't want to live around black people.
Wow.
They don't want to send their kids to school with black kids.
Wow.
And so if people are really talking about that they believe in equity, when I walk to the memorial, and white people are coming in from other places and they're bringing their kids and they won't even speak.
Right.
Which is my second point. I was saying to Tommy earlier, okay, you like dead black people.
Oh. Or musicians, or
okay, you like, yeah, but you like them dead better. And I think we really have to wrestle with that because, you know, a lot of people who are honoring George Floyd wouldn't have spoken to him on the street. Right. Would have run in the other direction. Okay?
All right. A lot of people is out here that wouldn't have probably been out here.
Hey, y'all can come join our discussion.
Yeah, I just had to second that. You know, because I'm on the north side originally. I went to Roosevelt High School and I lived on 38 in Chicago. Okay. But, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, like, people that's, like, showing extra love right now. And I get it, but I know deep down that it wouldn't be the case if everyone wasn't doing it. If it wasn't in their face. Like, it wasn't up front in front of everyone's face. If everyone wasn't doing it, I just know deep down that same love that, you know, white people are showing me every time I see them, I know it wouldn't be there. I show love every time, you know, before the situation, no matter what. Right. So I appreciate it, but I just know that, you know, it's in everyone's face, which makes it easier for people to feel like they need to do that. Feel like they need to, like, wave in their car when I'm on my bike or something.
which makes it harder for white people who aren't like that.
Right.
They don't want to give their
Right. And I'm pushing this hard, and I know I got to finish in a minute, but I'm pushing this hard because I want people to recognize we've been at this moment before.
Yes.
Okay? We've been at this moment before.
Excuse me, can you run that quote back about rage one more time? That was you who said this quote? You got a quote about rage?
Carmen.
That was Carmen.
No, it was somebody else. Okay, that's what it was. Okay.
I think it was our rage has to match our strategy. White supremacy is strategic.
Yeah, that's what Carmen said. Our rage has to match our strategy. We have to be strategic.
Yes.
because we have been at this moment before, okay? Now, Martin Luther King was hated till he was dead, okay? Malcolm X didn't become well loved until he was dead. And so when I say, okay, dead black men are loved more than living ones, I guess I want that to be something that people really do grapple with. The Institute's definition of racism is race prejudice plus power. And normally, if we were doing a workshop, we would take an hour to 90 minutes to unpack that definition, but we don't have that right now, so I'm not going to do it.
But this is the first of many assemblies, right? We're going to keep doing this.
Right. Yeah.
And could you go back and talk about redlining and maybe explain a little bit on how systemic racism was cooked into housing, and also how, when that didn't work, the threat of violence was used, like with the legal.
Okay. So I'm thinking that most people probably already know about the racial covenant here in Minneapolis, not just in Minneapolis, but here in Minneapolis. Yes, no, maybe?
No.
No? Okay. So
Maybe the spirit of it, but not the word.
So racial covenants were agreements that were written into the deeds of houses that said that you could not sell the house to someone who wasn't white, basically. And if you look at the housing patterns in Minneapolis now,
As soon as you cross Chicago.
as soon as you cross Chicago. And when I was a child, you didn't see black people living on the other side of Chicago. You didn't see them living much beyond 42nd, 43rd Street. And if you look at in that direction, okay, it's the same. If you lay over the housing demographics of now and 1940 and 50, they're almost identical. So housing segregation is still very much alive in Minneapolis, and we could do a whole thing on that. I won't. But what I do want to talk about is there's a house on the corner of 46th and Columbus. It belonged to the Arthur Lee family, and in the 30s, early 30s, Arthur Lee bought the house for himself, his wife, and his young daughter. She was 5. He was a World War I vet, and he worked for the post office. And they had streetcar riots to get them out of that house. The police stood by and did nothing. And actually, plug for unions, it was actually Arthur Lee's union brothers who came armed to guard his house and his family. They took his daughter to school every day. Mr. Lee felt like nobody was caring about his color when he was over there fighting in France on behalf of the United States, and that he had a right to live in peace with his family here in America, and that was just not going to be allowed. He lived there for several years, and then finally the family moved. They couldn't take it anymore, and he couldn't take what it was doing to his daughter. So there is a memorial marker on the corner of 46th and Columbus. It's on the southwest side of the street, so you can see that. I think. Okay, so there's a lot more history, but I just wanted to make sure that we kind of covered some of those basic things, because I think that a lot of times when people look at what happens to a neighborhood, what they see is the devastation, but they don't see the systemic disinvestment that comes before that. Right. And that there is power still here, and we are that power.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And we're working our way forward towards modern history and how we got here. And I want to introduce the little homie, Tommy McBrayer. He's an organizer for the Central Neighborhood, and he was born and raised in this community.
Yeah,
and he needs to tell
homie.
y'all about his experience.
Little homie.
Yeah, shout out to the little homie today. We're gonna be the little homie today. I just want to give a shout out to everybody that's here today, man. You know, the change starts with y'all showing up today, so give a round of applause to everybody's here today. I said give a round of applause for whoever's here today. Come on now. All right. Like I said, you know, I'm a stand-up guy. You know, I talk, you know, as a black crowd, when there's a white crowd, when there are cops around, when we talk political, you know. Like I said, I'm a Minnesotan. I'm a real Minnesotan. I grew up in Central Neighborhood for 21 years. I'm 30 years old now, so I moved here when I was 9 years old. I was part of a Big Brother, Big Sister program in Central Neighborhood. I had a white sister that showed me everything. But what that did was help me stay off the street, help me stay from gang banging and from drug dealing and things like that. I grew up with a crackhead father that was in and out of jail. I was in a household with a single mom, and she had 3 children. So I was a local kid, going to the local parks, going to the local stores, being a local resident. So I learned a lot from this neighborhood. And one thing that I don't get from this neighborhood is racism. This is one neighborhood why that sacred area is how it is. It's because I don't know how they is everywhere else in the world, but in South Minneapolis and B&O and Central Neighborhood and Powderhorn Neighborhood, it's a whole different feel of us white folks, I say, right? It's different. It's a different feel. I never felt like I wasn't welcome in the neighborhood. I didn't feel like I wasn't welcome in the average coffee shop with Maggie. Never felt like that. And I won't never feel like that. As long as this is my neighborhood, I'm gonna represent my neighborhood. I wanna partner up with a lot of you guys. When I see you guys on the street, I wanna shake hands or dap palms with you just like a regular person. That's what we're trying to bridge that gap of why Trump is trying to push the negative. You know, we're trying to stand up, you know, and unite. You know, one song that sticks with me is UNITY. Come on now, y'all stay with me, alright? UNITY, UNITY, UNITY. And that's all about the United States. It's united, you know, where you gotta be united, you know. So I can't do this just with my brothers and sisters. I need y'all as well. We gotta stick together. Like I said, this is a special place and a special time. And us leaders gotta lead. You know, we're looking for a lot of answers right now. So we're coming in publicly, offering time, space, and hands throughout this whole academic. I just want to give a shout out to everybody. Just want to introduce myself. You know, I am part of Central Neighborhood, Can-Do Central Area Neighborhood Development Organization. So I'm right next door to the laundromat. You guys need to find me or anything like that. All right, you guys. Thank you, Tommy.
So again, my name is Marjaan. So I moved here in 2007, and my experience growing up was very different than Tommy's. I grew up in the suburbs. I experienced violent white supremacy, which made me want to leave. So I moved to this neighborhood very intentionally, wanting to move around black people. Why did I want to live around black people? Because I didn't want to walk through my neighborhood feeling like I'm an outsider. Because I didn't want my neighbors calling the cops on me, right? Because I didn't want to drive down my block in broad daylight and have the police bust a U-turn and follow me just so they can run my plates and see, oh, he actually lives in this community, right? Where the hell are they from? I guarantee they're not from that community, right? I guarantee they didn't go to Kennedy High School where I went, right? 3 blocks down the street, right? So, when I moved into this community, it was very intentional. And it was a community that I wish I would have grew up in, right? So when the recession hit in 2008, this community was devastated. And, you know, I watched it change. I watched capitalist development vultures move into this community and try to buy it up, right? I watched gentrification happen probably, I started to really notice around 2011, and I started to see white folks really, first it was the bike path, 40th Street turned into a bicycle boulevard. And I was like, damn, okay, bikes are cool, but black workers and brown workers been riding bicycles to work forever. Ain't nobody built black bike paths for us, right? But now that it's trendy and white folks want to leave, you know, a more environmental safety world, friendly world, we get bike paths in the street, we get parking rides in the suburbs, right? When I lived in the suburbs, we had to walk a mile to catch the damn bus, right? So again, white supremacy responds to people who have power, right? So when I moved in this community, as things started to change, I started to get active. And I started to hear stories. And some of the first stories I heard, black folks were still grieving in 2008, 2009 from Central High School that was demolished 25 years prior to that. 25 years, people are still grieving, right? Hearing those stories really like affected me. I was like, damn, like a school means a lot to people. I didn't understand that because I hated my school. It was racist as hell, right? So as the community started to change, that's when I got active. It was a reaction, right? And I thought to myself, damn, that's how white supremacy works. It keeps us on the defense. What if we were proactively organizing and trying to prevent this shit from happening in the first place? So we started to get organized, and one thing folks started to do was look at neighborhood organizations. How do we take over neighborhood organizations, right? And one thing we forgot to talk about with the norms is a lot of folks have been around for a while. A lot of folks have had tension. None of this is personal, right? As we talk about these stories of what we experience, some of us have been involved in it. None of this is personal, right? So as we got involved with the neighborhood organization, me, Steph, a couple other friends, and then later Malik and some others, Maria, we noticed right away it was a very gentrified board. It was a pro-gentrification board. And what I mean is, folks had no analysis of racism. There was no anti-racist analysis, right? Folks were very pro-development, very pro-police. There was very little critical analysis of anything. So we started to change that. There was a lot of tension. But eventually, we led a movement to take over neighborhood organizations. Bryant Central Neighborhood Organizations, and all of it was really in response to gentrification, right? So the sewer co-op, it announced that it was looking to move into this community around 2012. And this was all, a lot of folks don't know this story, but this was all because of 38th in Chicago. Although the store ended up on 3rd, the original plan was to put a grocery store on 38th in Chicago to get rid of Cup Foods, to get rid of the gangbangers, to get rid of the black youth, the problem, the unwanted elements, right? People have been fighting this shit for way before I moved into this community, right? That's how it starts. And how does it end? It ends with the lynching of George Floyd. Right.
Yes, that's right.
So all the indicators were there if you were paying attention.
Yes.
That a racial clash will happen in this city and this community, right? Yeah. Could be ground zero. If you were paying attention, you were prepared for this shit. Yeah. Who's prepared for this? Who was not prepared for it? Let's be real. Right. That's real. That's real. A lot of black folks, not all of us, but a lot of us, we've been waiting for this our whole lives, right? We've been waiting for a world that's gonna recognize us and listen to us, right? So, what did we do differently when we started organizing this community? We listened to the people that have been here, right? We listened to their stories, and I learned about the history. I was like, damn, I had no idea how powerful this history was in this community. Prince grew up here, Morris Day and the Time, Sounds of Blackness, such a deep musical history. We got the brother Kenneth. Where's Kenneth? He's a brother with a musical family who has deep roots in this community. All these churches. There used to be a Nation of Islam mosque back in the day. It's a spiritual community, right? So, again, a lot of folks today are gonna hear stuff from neighbors, and I just want to remind folks, you heard this before, you just weren't listening. I'm happy to see this many people showed up, and they're actually ready to listen now. We've had community meeting after community meeting, and we get a couple dozen people, which is fine. I don't like talking in front of this many people, but I'm excited. Folks are ready to do the work. They're ready to listen. I just wish we didn't have to fucking burn down half the city to get y'all here, right? So, I'm starting to see Black Lives Matter signs pop up everywhere in the community. I'm like, wow, where were those before George Floyd was lynched? And are they shields? What's the passage from the Bible about lamb's blood, marking your door with lamb's blood to protect your home? Is that what's happening here? Or are y'all committed to the real work? Because if so, when you hear the Klan is coming, you're not going to take down your Black Lives Matter sign, right? Because guess what? I can't take off my color when I leave my house. You feel me? I'm at risk every time I step out that door. So if you can't take a risk of leaving a Black Lives Matter sign up in your window, then you need to think about that. Are you really here for change, or are you here to absolve yourself from creating this mess? Are you here? Are you showing up to get brownie points, to get validation that you're one of the good white people? Because you fucking with the wrong dude. I'm not that man.
That's right.
And everybody in this community who knows me knows that. I piss people off.
Good. Good.
Like I said, it's because I grew up dealing with violent white supremacy. Sometimes you gotta draw a line in the sand. And now, for me, that line is safety. Again, we're gonna keep coming back to this safety. I have never felt safe with the police, probably from age of 9 on up. I have got my ass whooped by the cops in the suburbs and in downtown Minneapolis. The police have terrorized our communities. They have terrorized me personally. The police have been terrorists, but I live in a world that says they're the good guys. And that the freedom fighters who fought for my cause are the terrorists. Do you understand how black folks have been gaslit?
Yes.
Even more so, do you understand how you've been gaslit? So again, we got signs popping up in our windows. People see now my safety is tied to their safety. Shit. I wish I would have understood that. I wish we didn't have to burn half the city down to realize our struggles are all tied together, right? People didn't think, they called people's bluff, right? They didn't think they'd do it. But we said, don't call these people's bluff. I'm a history teacher. I study history. Because I study history, I know how to prepare. So, I think we're going to transition into breakout groups now. And we're going to keep these conversations going. So the goal for these big assemblies is to support. The real work's going to happen midweek. We want folks to break out into block groups to talk about this. Not to recreate neighborhood watches or the police. To build community with one another. To listen to black folks. To develop an anti-racist analysis. And white folks, you ain't gonna do that by running your mouth. You ain't gonna do that by crying at every meeting. It's okay to cry as long as we get to the other side of that, right? Shame is okay as long as you don't get stuck in that shame, right? If you feel no shame, there's something wrong with you. But how do we move through this journey together? So, we're gonna get into breakout groups, and we're hoping we can get folks to convene midweek and bring y'all back next Saturday. The debating, we're not here to debate if you like the police or not. You're gonna listen. And you could debate with the neighbors on your block if you want, and then you could come back next Sunday and report back. Let's talk about it. Let's support one another. We're here in big groups to support the small groups. And eventually, this is gonna go somewhere. Hopefully, maybe we could start up anti-racist education groups, or anti-racist art groups, or anti-racist babysitting clubs, or whatever. Mutual aid, right? Again, it sucks that we had to burn down half the city to redistribute resources and wealth. But it's beautiful to see that people finally understand the resources need to go where the need is, not where people, not who's most deserving. That's how we got here. If you think wealth and resources go to the people who are most deserving, then you have been lied to. You have been complicit in all of this, because guess what? who controls the narrative of who's most deserving? The same people who own the resources, right? So, all right, let's transition. So I'm gonna pass it back to Malik. And then, so what, about an hour in breakout groups, and then we'll come back to a big group right here.
I was going to ask you one question. Have you ever heard about the 4500 block of Oakland Avenue? Okay.
But I did want to mention that's a resource. So Sandra talked about the redlining and the racial covenant. There's a movie on YouTube called Jim Crow of the North. It's about Minneapolis and our community, and it explains that. Raise your hand if you've seen that movie, Jim Crow of the North. Jim Crow of the North. It's about Minneapolis and our community specifically, and it'll break stuff down. So get on YouTube. We're putting together a whole Google Doc of resources. There have been a few articles that tell the story of our community, but guess what? Now the world is telling the story of our community and the history. Again, it took a brother to get lynched on 38th in Chicago for it to happen, but it's all good because George Floyd has changed the world. Rest in peace.
Say his name. Say his name. Say his name. Say his name.
George Floyd.
Say his name.
George Floyd.
Hand for Marjaan.
I didn't know I'd ever be one of those people.
Marjaan.
4 days ago.
Thanks, brother. So we are here now because we are transitioning into a new society and a new world. And you all are here to shape that, especially those who have been ignored. So if you're here for justice and you're here to fight for justice, raise your hand right now. Where are those hands? Where are those hands? You can see me? Raise those hands. Great. So now we're going to break out into small groups, and then we have stakes here, wooden stakes, second to Chicago. So find where you're at, line up, and then we have some questions for you. We're going to have some, we're going to pass out some clipboards with those questions, and then we want you to also sign into those sheets as well if we miss you. And then we're going to have an hour or about 50 minutes to actually go through some of those questions. Again, this is not about debate. So, and then we have group facilitators. So we have Katrina, Katie, Sonia, and Brett. But then we realized that I counted 90 people here when I was counting. So we're open to take some volunteers to lead some group discussions as well. So with that being said, second over here, third, Clinton, fourth, all the way to Chicago.
It's all good. There's
so find your state.
It's mostly just facilitating. Yeah.
And we got people passing out clipboards right now.
Well, they're on Facebook Live, and I can forward them to you. Yep. So, we're part of the group that's called Intersection of Hope now.
Okay.
And we want to get all the leaders in this community together. I'm trying to access corporate funds. Mary Claire, my neighbor, $60,000
Second, third,
I gotta get these clipboards passed out, but can I just...
We pay for the porta potties and all the stuff, but that's why we're in everything. But
Can
we
I
don't.
give you this? I would love to be in touch. I gotta organize.
Of course you do. Organizers have to organize. Take a picture and send it to me. This is Maggie, one of the key staff from Intersection of Hope. This is Mary Claire, key staff. She's the one that started the GoFundMe. She's very humble. She personally started it when I was in my sleep and has raised $10,000 to pay for the specific porta potties, the specific tents, the specific needs that are out there right now in what is almost like a third world country in terms of how we're living. It's a beautiful, sacred space, a memorial, and we're trying to make it as such. We're all the way down to matching tents and red velvet rope stanchions, but I need to check out.
And found the group. Head off to wherever you want in the park, preferably shade, and we'll get some questions over to you in clipboards.
Oh my gosh! Seriously, if you don't want people to get close to you, you should not bring that puppy. That's just like cruel. I mean, does the fact that you got her yesterday take away from the fact of how cruel it is?
Yeah, you can take
You
your
had
stuff
her
with
all
you. Go
night.
ahead.
We don't get her at all. I'm just trying to guilt you into submission. Why are you here today, and where do you live? Would you mind taking your mask off? I'll step back.
And just really excited to see these conversations getting going.
Absolutely. We're stuck at home. This is why it happened all this way, because we have time to watch this and think about it, rather be grinding it out in the corporate world.
Hey, if you're in your group, space out.
They did not cover the specific, I don't have context to this. What is the Bryant neighborhood? What streets? He's organizing now. But you know, roughly, basically, it's the Cup Foods neighborhood. But from what I heard, Cup Foods is like 4 neighborhoods that converge at that intersection.
Yeah, Bancroft, Powderhorn, Central, and Bryant.
Well, you know more than I do. I'm in Regina, which some people call Regina, which is just offensive. Is it?
Yeah, ultimately, my hope is to take this conversation to my neighbors.
That's perfect. So you're just going to be like a phone tree, but you're going to be a door knocker tree to... We're with Intersection of Hope. We are the group that's like 4 women that have gathered together to raise funds specifically for the memorial. And so we're providing the porta potties, we're providing the tents, trying to get a golf cart, you know, things to make it safe and secure, washing stations, etc. It started with the cleaning group here that I did because I opened it to Facebook, and it was 8 of my friends. It turned into 400, so I had to organize here. So I would like for you to take to your group as well, to contribute to, of course, Can Do or this neighborhood association, but specifically, you know, to make sure there's porta potties, but make sure to tell them where to put their funds, because they don't know where to put them.